Hi everyone, thank you for joining me today for the overview video for these oranges on a branch. I created a 3-part tutorial series over on Patreon for this drawing, which a couple sections move a lot slower. I did 2 real-time sections for this drawing. One of the leaves and one of the oranges were done in real time there. So this is just the quick overview video to give you an idea of how I drew this. I am working here on Rising Museum mount board, the 2-ply paper, and this paper comes in these really large sheets that I cut down into smaller sizes. And this one is a pretty large drawing. It is actually 13 by 16 inches. So when you draw on a larger scale like this, it does make it easier to get some of the fine details. The larger you work, the more details obviously you are able to draw in. I am working on these leaves the way I work on all of my leaves, by first outlining the leaf and indenting the veins, especially on these leaves that have these really obvious veins that you can see there. Then I go over my shadow areas, then the midtones, blend it all out with solvent, and then come back through and add details. You saw me there using the electric eraser just to pull up some texture. And that's basically the process. I did that over and over. The main difference is that I'm just going to be using slightly different colors depending on, you know, the reference image and what leaf I'm working on. There you saw me bring in some chartreuse. And I was working with several different brands of pencils for this one just because I was having a little bit of fun and just felt like playing around and experimenting a little bit. I've recently started drawing more with the Holbein brand of pencils, which I really like, especially on this paper. So I wanted to experiment some with those because those are new pencils for me. But then I have some old standbys that I know are going to work well in especially some of the green Polychromos. So the Polychromos pencils that I was working with were the chrome oxide green, which is one of my go-to pencils. It's just a really nice dark shadow pencil. And also permanent green and permanent green olive. Again, both must-have pencils on my list. Great for drawing leaves and foliage, any kind of botanical things that I work on. There are certain greens that just lend themselves better, and those are 3 that work really well. As far as the Holbein pencils go, I was using apple green and leaf green, also olive and olive yellow, and a little bit of chartreuse. Especially you can see the one leaf that's kind of hidden back there. That's got more of those mossy colors. So that was a lot of the moss and olive. So they just vary somewhat. And I just go over and over and over. Here you can see me getting started on this leaf. I'm going to outline everything. That's that Polychromos chrome oxide green. And for this particular leaf, and for some of these lower leaves on this orange, there weren't veins that needed to be indented. What I was seeing here were more just dark shadows of veins. So pay attention to your reference image. Sometimes you don't have a sharp vein in that leaf. Sometimes it is more of like this shadow. So that's what I was getting in here right now. And I feel like I missed one of the pencils, the Derwent Lightfast Racing Green. That's what I'm using right there. That is a really dark green that I was using in combination with that Polychromos chrome oxide green for those very darkest areas. And then you saw me come back through. There were a couple of those Derwent Lightfast greens that I was using for the brighter areas, which were grass green and grass green 70%. So probably 10 different green pencils went into these leaves. And not every single leaf had all of those pencils. It just depended on the reference image. So I just look back and forth between the drawing and the reference and pretty much draw what I see. That's just old-fashioned advice, but it really is true. Just look over, and what you see, go ahead and put that in. And that's what I mostly do. So for this leaf, the veins were just a little bit more obvious, I guess, and sharp. So I did go through and put those in with the darker green colors. That's another thing that I do when I'm indenting those veins. They're not always white. They're not always green. Sometimes I use gray. Sometimes the veins are darker than the rest of the leaf. Sometimes they're lighter. So whatever I indent into the paper is pretty much what I'm going to have. So I try to match that up as well as I can. And then this particular leaf was a lot lighter, so I think that leaf green from Holbein was one of the main colors there. But then there was some shadow in here as well. I want these to look as natural as possible. And I was commenting as I was working on the tutorial, you know, these leaves are not perfect, stunning pieces on their own. These are meant to work together as a whole piece. So zoomed in this closely, I don't think I would be super happy with this just by itself, but zooming away as a part of the entire piece, this is exactly what I was going for. This video is zoomed in very, very close, and most people aren't going to be looking at your artwork under a magnifying glass. And I think you'll see what I'm talking about when the camera pulls back and you can see everything all together. One of the things to keep in mind if you're working on the Rising Museum mount board is that you do not have to press hard on this paper. It really picks up a lot of pigment. The pencils really stick well to this paper, which is one of the reasons I like it. It seems to almost grab the pencil, and just in a really good way. It's not slick at all, just it grabs the pencil in a way that makes it very easy to work on, which is why I would highly recommend it for beginners. The only drawback to this paper is that it comes in these really large sheets that you have to cut down. It's not quite as convenient as working in a drawing pad, but I find it to be worth it. But there are some other really great papers out there that I like to work on, that I have worked on for years, especially the Strathmore Bristol Smooth paper. I like to work on that paper when I want something really bright and smooth, very painterly. And I also like to work on the Arches Hot Press watercolor paper. So that's another good one. And I'm finishing up these leaves here. This last leaf there, that's the one that I did in real time on the Patreon videos. And getting started on the fun part, these big, beautiful, bright oranges. I felt like I was working on a sunset. Just the colors were so beautiful here. And I was working in a really scribbly process, I guess is the best way to describe that, on these very first layers. I just wanted to get some of this pigment down, and you can see just how nicely that paper really grabs that pigment. And I was using especially the Holbein pencils for these first layers of oranges. I was using Holbein Orange, Holbein Sunflower, and Holbein Tangerine, just gorgeous colors. And just slowly starting to build up my shadows and my highlights with those three pencils. I mentioned in the tutorial that all of the different brands of pencils have oranges that would work really great here. I used several of the Polychromos oranges as well. Orange glaze, dark cadmium orange, dark cadmium yellow, cadmium orange. So those were very similar color-wise to these Holbein. I kind of matched those up. I also think that the Caran d'Ache Luminance, a combination of the apricot, orange, and cornelian would work really well here. So you don't have to use the exact same pencils that I'm using to follow along with these tutorials. You're going to have a slightly different finished product if you don't do exactly what I'm doing at all times, which is probably what you're going to want. You don't want it to look exactly like mine in most cases. That's one of the Polychromos pencils. Just getting lots of layer of pencil down here. That's a Derwent Lightfast Flame, which is a beautiful reddish orange color. And then there's my brightest, more of a yellow pencil. That's the Holbein Sunflower. And you can see I'm working around the highlight there a little bit, but I did, before I started drawing, use my white pencils to protect the paper there with a layer of white. Now here I'm blending out with my solvent, and I am using a Royal & Langnickel number 4. That's an angular brush, and that comes in a set of those Royal & Langnickel brushes that I think work really well for this process. And I was using the new Utrecht Nood Odorless paint thinner, and blending that all out. And you can see here I just have a really nice smooth base to go over and add all of my details. And I started off just basically coming through and following along with the same series of colors that I had used in the initial process. So lots of those exact same Holbein. There's the Derwent Flame again. That's for that darker shadow area. That's a Prismacolor pencil. That's a new pencil for me. That's the Prismacolor Cadmium Orange Hue that I used for that darker, almost pumpkin colored shadow. I just wanted to darken that up some, so that was a really great pencil to use there. Was happy with the way that turned out. And you can see I'm just layering and layering and layering, looking back and forth again between the drawing and the reference and just trying to replicate what I can see there. Using a dry brush there to smooth everything out, and then coming back through. There's my white Holbein pencil, adding some highlight detail. I really like that pencil. It was really sticking well to my paper. You can see how that's showing up on top of all those other layers. That's almost unheard of when it comes to colored pencil. It helps that I've protected the paper at the start with a little bit of white, and using the electric eraser to pull up some of the waxy pencil that's on there. That helps that white stick even more. But the Prismacolor white or the Derwent Drawing Chinese white would be other really good options if you don't have that Holbein pencil. But I'm pretty sure I'm going to be buying those in bulk because it really sticks well. I need to try it on some other papers too. I'm curious if it has anything to do with the paper or if it's the pencil itself. Here I'm working on the second orange. This is the one that I did in real time for Patreon. So basically talked through and explained everything as I was drawing this, but for the most part I used the same process. If you look at the orange on the left, you can see some little indentations. I indented the paper just to try to replicate some of the texture that you see on an orange, but I did not want to draw in all of those little textured spots individually. That just wasn't the level of detail that I was going for on this drawing. So I think that indenting the paper and creating some of those little pockets worked really well for the overall effect I was going for, and you can see that on this second orange now. And now just doing the finishing touches on this branch, and you're going to be able to see my final drawing here. So there you have it. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.